All right, good day, everybody. Mr. Hudeberg here. So this is for the folks who weren't able to make it to the parent meeting. So just a quick introduction. My name is Mr. Hudeberg. I am your child's AP Environmental Science teacher. Just a little bit of background about me. I've been teaching, this will be my 22nd year teaching and my 21st year at Wahai. This year, I teach AP Environmental Science and another course called AVID. Those kids are 12th graders this year. I'm currently the science department chair. Not a whole lot of status there. It just means I do most of the ordering, etc. for the science department. And I also spend about 2 hours a day kind of doing a science coordinator type thing. Mostly that entails a lot of spreadsheets and data collection. I got my Bachelor of Science in Geosciences at Pacific Lutheran University in 2000. This had sort of an environmental science focus, as back then there weren't a lot of schools with specific environmental science degrees. And ended up getting my Master of Arts in Education shortly after in 2002. So what we're going to cover is what is AP. Helping you guys understand about AP test and college credit. We'll talk a little bit about the specific expectations for this course and AP classroom resources that are going to be important to know about. We'll do a brief overview of the topics we cover in this class and then a little bit about how grades are calculated for this course specifically. So some of you, this might be your first child to go through the AP program that Walla Walla High School has to offer. So I did want to take a moment to just explain what that little AP logo means in front of some of the classes we offer. So AP is a College Board approved curriculum, which essentially is college curriculum taught in the high school. And because it is college curriculum, students can potentially receive college credit if, that's a big, put that in capital letters for you guys, they take and score sufficiently high on a standardized AP test in May. And essentially that would entail anything above that 2. So 3, 4, or 5. 3 is considered qualified, 4 very, and 5 extremely well qualified. Now, how that translates to college credit is actually up to whatever institution they end up deciding to go to. So for example, some of the more selective universities may not accept a 3, and in some cases, maybe not a 4. There are a few organizations out there that don't accept AP credit at all. Now, a new comer to Walla Walla High School this year, and it will only be expanding over time, is also what they call college in the high school. And so you might see CIHS attached to some of the courses at Wahai. This year, there are no sciences under that umbrella, although next year, so 2024, 2025, the plan is to have at least 2 science classes that fall under the umbrella of college and high school. The difference there is college and high school classes, and most of them, I think, are through Eastern Washington University this year, although I think all the universities in Washington offer some sort of partnership with high schools. But the way that looks is a college and high school class, which might also be AP at the same time, is by virtue of just taking the class, and I think it's a C or better, although that might differ based on the class, automatically gets the student credit through Eastern Washington University or whatever the partner university is. Now, so a key difference with AP might be a little bit more broadly applicable if they score 3, 4, or 5 to more universities, depending on what their transfer regulations and rules are. College and high school, if it's through Eastern Washington University, for example, will automatically count as credit at Eastern Washington University and likely several other schools as well. Because it is a 4-year university that's accredited, it's likely that those credits will count at other schools. I would just say that for now, at least, AP is probably a little bit more broadly accepted, although that can differ from one place to the next. Now, most of our college and high school classes this year are also AP, and students might be encouraged to get the college and the high school credit and also take the AP test so that they are setting themselves up for the best chance of that credit actually counting. Okay, so I hopefully explained that difference pretty well. Now, just so for full transparency, so in this class, so what you see on this chart right here is a list of all the AP classes currently offered at Walla Walla High School. And so what I put here is the global pass rate and the Washington State pass rate. So again, this is not Walla Walla High School pass rate, but you'll see that different courses have very different levels of success from high school students actually earning college credit as a result of taking the class. So you'll see I highlighted in green where environmental science falls on this list. Surprisingly, environmental science falls near the bottom globally and in Washington State of the number or percentage of students who take the exam who score a 3 or higher. Okay, now I do not want this to discourage anybody because Walla High School, I will brag about our school till I'm blue in the face. Traditionally, it does much better in almost every class that we offer than both the global pass rate and the Washington State pass rate. So, for example, my students last year that took the test, I had 70 of them, and I will brag that that's the most of any AP class. Took the test last year, and my group, 70%. Scored a 3 or higher, which is a much better and more hopeful outlook. Almost identical to the percentage the year previous, and that's pretty typical. The one year I would say that kind of stands out, of course, was the year we were mostly online. That percentage was much closer to the global average at that time. And here's the score breakdown. So I bring this up, again, not to brag about me. This is more to brag about our school because almost every program we offer had significantly higher results, pass rates, than the Washington or global pass rate, which is great. Means we're doing good things at Walla High. But I also bring this up so I don't want to discourage anybody. And given the fact that a fair number, I would think about close to 40 of those 70 last year were actually ninth graders. So, and they did extremely well. Very proud of that group. So that being said, if a student decides not to take the AP test in May, there is zero penalty whatsoever. They still get the AP logo on their transcript. They still get the lab science credit for high school. They just would not be eligible for the college credit. I think in 2024, 2025, I should be able to manage also providing the college and the high school credit. I just won't be eligible for this coming year for reasons outside my control. Okay, last little bit here, I do want to introduce you guys to the AP classroom resources. So your students, if they are upperclassmen, they likely have already been able to jump right in there because they likely already have a College Board account. So all they had to do was quickly type in a join code and join my AP classroom. If your students have not done the PSAT or SAT or AP before, they likely have to create an account, and that's a much more involved process, 15 to 20 minutes of filling out all kinds of information, address, emails, when do you expect to graduate high school, etc. And that's because this is sort of a one-stop shop. So at the College Board website, the same login that they use for my class specifically, that same login is also used for all kinds of things. So PSAT and SAT registration, that's the same login will also be where they get their scores. For my class specifically, there are review videos for every single topic that we cover in this class throughout the year. Most of those videos are created by very, very experienced AP teachers or often college professors. There's a whole bunch of practice AP test questions that'll help kids navigate. There are what are called progress checks, which are ways for kids to kind of see how they're doing in terms of AP test readiness. This one-stop shop has all of these resources for kids. So I really strongly encourage them to try to finish the registration and sign-in process this long weekend, just so we can start getting access to those resources almost right away. All right. So, coming out of the broader AP world, let's look a little bit more at what's expected for this class specifically. I've explained this to students already, but expectations for me, because we do have until late April to get through every single thing that we need to cover. That means that we do have to send some of the work home with the kids. And the way that looks for me is the students will take notes and read at home 3 to 4 times per week. And what that looks like, there are some YouTube lectures I've created that are usually between 15 and 20 minutes long, and selected portions of the textbook that accompany that. And so often there's just some additional information, maybe a slightly different look at some of the things that come up in the YouTube lecture. So usually kids should be looking at about 30-ish minutes per homework session, 3 to 4 times per week. So we're not looking at an extraordinary amount. It just really is important that students make a habit of doing those things on the night that they're assigned. And essentially what that looks like is because I really want the students to use class time to interact with each other and problem solve and kind of apply knowledge, this is the information that they just need to have in order to be able to do that in the first place. And I feel like that's the best thing to do at home. That way, the kind of the more complicated and application pieces happen in class where they have both peer support and support from me. And on that note, it's really important that they engage in both small and large group dialogue during class. Might be, at the beginning of the year, a little trickier to get the kids comfortable with each other. I work really hard to promote this and get kids to engage with their peers. That is, in my opinion, lots of research will back that up. That is when most learning happens for kids. So it's super important they engage in that and work on being more comfortable there. They do need to keep some organizational system. I really want them keeping a portfolio of notes, quizzes, labs, tests, like the important things that are a good record of what we've done and learned throughout the year. Now, I've waffled so many times as to whether that portfolio itself should be a part of their overall grade. And since I'm already going to be using many of those things in the grade book, there's no reason to add an additional graded portion for the portfolio. What the portfolio will do is it'll be a good record of what we've done. And then if kids stay organized with this, and I will, of course, work with them on this part, they will then have a nice and thorough resources for preparing for that AP test in May. So it's going to be really important they hold on to certain things. And I told them if they prefer a folder system, that's fine. Or I prefer a binder system with dividers. I just think it's a little bit easier to keep things organized that way. But it's up to them how they do that. All right. Now, jumping into what we cover. So here is the basic breakdown of which units will be covered and when. I can always provide much more detail as to what this looks like within each unit. But Unit 1, we just got going on that one, is ecosystems. And in our first semester, you'll notice that we cover a fair amount more Semester 1 than we do Semester 2. And that is because we have to get through all of this information before May. And so I kind of have to stack a little bit more heavily into Semester 1 so that we have ample time to wrap up before May and also get some review in before that AP test. So we get through about 5.5 units by the end of Semester 1, and then about 3.5 units before that AP test. And then Unit 10 happens after the AP test. That's when we're done essentially with new material. And so usually we'll come up with some sort of student project at the end. All of these units are essentially linked to these 4 big ideas in environmental science: energy transfer, interactions between Earth systems, interactions between different species in the environment, and then big idea number 4, sustainability, which is really the culmination of what we do over the school year. Um, now, grading, if I've not had one of your children, maybe an older sibling or something within the last couple of years, this is going to be new to you. And student grades are going to be assigned based on performance in key science and engineering practices. And a couple of them, there's actually 7 total, but I sort of linked a couple of them together. So, for example, data analysis and model analysis are listed as separate practices, but I just combine those together because it's just a lot easier for me to put those together. So they will be basically graded on 5 performance practices. And so, for example, in their first graded kind of unit exam, I think will be the first thing we do. I will hit 3 or 4 of these practices. And so instead of seeing one score for our first kind of unit exam, you will see 3 or 4 different scores split up into the categories that are important there. And I believe for our first one, there'll be concept explanation, data model and analysis, and also a little bit of mathematical application. And then those will be split up based on these percentages over here. Notice that portfolio score. I'll likely enter some things just so we're kind of keeping track of that. But notice that is not going to be for a grade as of right now. Okay. Now the last little bit here, and I'm going to try to keep this to less than 20 minutes, is to talk a little bit about how this will look over time. And so being a science teacher, I, of course, love graphs, okay? But you'll see grade books are going to do averages, right? So I'm going to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 score in those respective categories. So when they take their first exam or turn in a project, they're going to be split up into which practices are best fit the information in that unit or what I'm asking them to do for a project or presentation. And sometimes cases, obviously, experimental design, that would mean something like a lab report. Okay. They'll get a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 score in each of those categories. And then over time, the grade book will do some mathematical wizardry, and you'll see an overall average grade for your student that will fall in that range. You'll notice I do a 5-point scale. There's probably at least half of your students' teachers will do a 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 scale. I think the entire English department does 4, 3, 2, 1. The world languages department does a 4, 3, 2, 1 scale. So because AP scale is a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I like to use that scale for this class. Plus, it just gives me a few more gradations to use. Now, that being said, I do want to spend a little time just kind of helping you guys also understand that it doesn't simply come down to averages in my class. Okay, so your student may be a 9th grader or a senior at any given time in this class. So all of my classes are a mix of all 4 grades. Right? Now, it might be that I have a senior walk in the door who's already completed AP Bio and AP Physics and AP Chemistry. Chances are they are going to be extremely proficient in the science and engineering practices already. And really all they'll be doing in my class is learning new information and maybe slightly new applications. So that student is probably going to start the year at 5s and just sort of carry that average all the way through the year, right? And of course, they will probably easily stay within that A range throughout the course of the year, which is great. Okay. Now, if a student is a 9th grader, and this is most definitely going to be their first AP class and definitely their first AP Science class, or a sophomore, in some cases juniors and seniors might be their first stab at an AP class. They've not been held to that college standard yet, most likely. And so they're going to develop those science and engineering practices over time. So maybe early in the year, they start off in that 2 to 3 range. Okay. But over time, if they show growth, so each of these categories, I just showed you guys back here, right? They're going to have 4 or 5, in some cases 6 or 7 scores over the course of a semester in that one practice. So if a student can show sufficient growth over time, so let's say their first score is a 2 or 3, and this is in September, and then maybe they show growth over time, and by the end of the semester, they show 2 to 3 scores in that 5 range. Okay, so this is what they call a growth model for grading. So what this tells me, so if they go, let's say over the course of the semester in mathematical applications, let's say they go 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 over the course of the semester. What I would do in that case, and I would actually make the students dissect their grade and look for that, is this, I would believe, is the best indicator of where that student ended up at the end of the semester. And I would then go back and actually mark the 2 and the 3 as no count. And so their grade would actually show an average of their last 3 data points. All right. Now, if that were flipped around, let's say a student started strong, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2 over the course of time, I would just stick with the average. I really don't want to knock out those 5s from early in the year. I feel like that wouldn't be fair. So I will only mark scores no count if it works in favor of the student. Okay. I believe that is the best summary that I can give you of how I do grading. If you have more questions about how this model works, I invite you to email. Obviously, we will have parent-teacher conferences sometime near the end of October, where we'll actually have some scores in the grade book, and I can explain that in much more detail if and when the time calls for it. All right, thank you.